The marital finances had always been a strained subject in their household. While the husband, earning $250,000, dutifully sent funds to his mother, his wife struggled alone to make ends meet for their child. When she sought assistance, he casually suggested, "Borrow from your father if you can't afford your child." "I will," she replied with a serene smile. That evening, he was met with a surprise. Movers were emptying the apartment. "Welcome, dear listeners. I'm delighted to welcome you to my channel. I present to you a new, engaging story. Enjoy listening." Xenia lifted the edge of the curtain and glanced into the courtyard. Her husband's car was already parked, meaning he would be upstairs soon. She let the fabric drop and walked into the kitchen, where buckwheat was finishing its cooking in a pot, and mechanically stirred it. A pan with chicken breast sat on the stove. Cheap, tough, but at least it was something. They had run out of milk yesterday, and cottage cheese too. Tomorrow, Myron would have to have water-based porridge for breakfast again. He's 4 years old. A growing body requires protein, calcium, and vitamins. The pediatrician at the clinic repeated this like a mantra each visit. Xenia opened the refrigerator. It was almost empty. 3 eggs, a pack of butter, a little cheese. Her payday was still a week away. There were only 2,000 rubles left on her card. That would be enough for bread, pasta, and some vegetables if she was frugal. She closed the door and leaned her forehead against its cool surface. 7 years ago, she had married Artyom Ladygin, a handsome, self-assured programmer with a good salary. He had promised her care, stability, a family. The first 2 years were fine. They rented an apartment together, saved for a down payment on a mortgage, and went on seaside vacations. Then Myron was born and something began to shift. Artyom started visiting his mother more frequently. Lyudmila Fyodorovna, a 57-year-old woman with tightly set lips and a perpetual frown in her eyes, lived alone in a 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts. After her divorce, she was left with a small pension and a host of life's grievances. Her only joy was her son. "Mom isn't feeling well," Artyom would say, preparing for another visit. Again, a weary Xenia would jiggle a crying infant. "Artyom, perhaps you should call a doctor for her?" "She doesn't need a doctor. She needs attention." That attention evolved into financial support. First, Artyom began buying things for his mother, saying, "You can't live on a pension." Then he started covering utility bills, then medications, clothing, a phone repair, a new television. "Artyom, we're barely making ends meet ourselves," Xenia cautiously remarked when Miron turned 1. "We're running out of diapers and formula, and you're buying Mom a television for 40,000. "She's my mother," he cut her off. "She raised me alone, understand? Alone. I owe her." Xenia remained silent. Arguing was futile. Lyudmila Fyodorovna could induce guilt in her son with surgical precision. Every call from her began with a sigh. Every sentence contained a hint about how hard her life was, how much she suffered, how unappreciated she was. When Miran was 2, Xenia returned to work, securing a remote content manager position for 35,000 a month. It wasn't much, but it was something. Artyom earned 250,000. By their city's standards, that was quite respectable. One would think a family of 3 could live more than comfortably, but money seemed to slip through their fingers. Xenia kept an expense ledger. Rent, 40,000. Utilities, 5,000. Groceries, 20,000 if they were frugal. Clothes for a growing child, medication, household supplies, transportation, another 15,000. That totaled around 80,000 for essentials. 170,000 remained. Where did it all go? The answer was simple. Lyudmila Fyodorovna. Artyom transferred money to his mother every month. First 20,000, then 30, then 50. His mother-in-law always found a reason. The roof leaked. She needed dental work. A friend was sick and needed help. Artyom never refused. "It's temporary," he'd tell Xenia when she tried to discuss finances, "until she gets back on her feet." But Lyudmila Fyodorovna had no intention of getting back on her feet. Why would she, when she had a son to provide for her? The last 6 months had become unbearable. Artyom was sending his mother up to 150,000 a month. The remaining money was critically insufficient for the family. Xenia stopped buying clothes for herself, wearing her old ones. She bought Myron clothes at sales or took them from friends. She chose the cheapest groceries, forgoing fruits, meat, and fish. Artyom, we need to talk, she said a month ago, as he was once again preparing to send money to his mother. About what? About money. We can't live like this. We don't have enough for food, do you understand? Miran needs to eat properly. He's 4 years old. Artyom looked up at her with tired eyes. Kshusha, I work. I earn. What else do you want? I want that money to stay in our family, not go to your mother. His face hardened. My mother needs help and your son doesn't. Ksenia's voice trembled. He needs milk, cottage cheese, meat. I can't buy him proper food because we don't have money. Don't exaggerate, we have enough money. Enough. I have 3,000 on my card until payday. 3,000? Artyom? And where is your salary? 35,000 I spend on the child and groceries you don't deem necessary to buy. He stood up, grabbed his phone. I'm not listening to this. My mother is sacred to me. The door slammed. Ksenia was left alone in the kitchen, clutching an empty mug. Myron was fussing in the other room, building something with old blocks. After that conversation, Artyom became even colder. He came home late, said nothing, and spent his weekends at his mother's. Lyudmila Fyodorovna called him 3 times a day, complaining about her health, her neighbors, or the weather. He listened for hours, and Ksenia's requests were met with monosyllabic replies. 3 days ago, a breaking point occurred. Ksenia was with Myron at the children's clinic for a routine checkup. The pediatrician, an elderly woman with a weary face, examined the boy and frowned. He's pale and listless. What are you feeding him? As best I can, Ksenia answered honestly. Porridge, pasta, sometimes chicken. Dairy, rarely fruit. We don't always have enough money. The doctor looked at her intently. The child is 4 years old. He's growing. He needs a balanced diet. Milk, cottage cheese, meat, fish, vegetables, fruits. Otherwise, problems will arise. Anemia, developmental delays, a weak immune system. Do you understand? Ksenia nodded. Her lips pressed tight. Tears welled up in her eyes. That evening, she tried to talk to Artyom again. He was sitting on the sofa, engrossed in his phone. We were at the doctor's today. Well, the doctor said Miran looks unwell and needs to eat properly. Artyom didn't look up. I don't have anything to feed him with. Ksenia's voice broke. I don't have money, do you understand? I've been saving on everything all month just to feed him somehow, and you don't care. Artyom finally tore himself away from the screen and looked at her coldly. Borrow from your father if you can't afford your child, he said indifferently. He has plenty of money. Ksenia froze. A ringing sounded in her ears. What did you hear? Your father earns quite well. Ask him. I spend my money on my mother anyway. On my mother, he confirmed, who gave birth to me and raised me, and let your father help his grandson. But you're Miran's father, she said disbelievingly. It's your responsibility. My responsibility is to earn. I earn. How you spend the money is your business. Ksenia stood in the middle of the room, feeling something inside her finally break. He looked at her calmly, without a trace of sympathy. His mother received $150,000 a month for her whims, while their own son ate scraps. I'll borrow, she said quietly and smiled. Artyom nodded and buried himself in his phone again. Ksenia went into the bedroom, closed the door, and took out her phone. Her hands trembled. She opened her father's contact and typed a message. Dad, can I come over? Need to talk urgently? The reply came a minute later. Of course, my daughter. Tomorrow morning. I'll be waiting. Ksenia's father, Grigory Lvovich Polakov, lived alone in a spacious 3-bedroom apartment in the city center. After his wife's death 5 years ago, he had withdrawn into himself but gradually recovered. He worked as a chief engineer at a large plant. He earned well and spent little. Ksenia was his only daughter, and he loved her with that quiet, strong love that requires no words. When she arrived, he met her at the door, tall, gray-haired, with thoughtful gray eyes. Hello, Kashusha. Come in. She entered, took off her coat. She had left Miran with a neighbor. The conversation was going to be serious. Tea? No need, Dad. I need to talk to you. They sat at the kitchen table. Grigory Lvovich waited in silence. Ksenia recounted everything. The money Artyom sent to his mother, the lack of funds for their child, her husband's indifference, the remark he made last night. Her voice trembled, but she held herself together. Her father listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was silent for a long time, gazing out the window. "What do you intend to do?" he finally asked. "Leave him," Xenia replied firmly. "I can't do it anymore, but I have nowhere to go. I don't have money for rent, for moving. I was thinking, perhaps Myron and I could stay with you for a while until I get back on my feet. I'll find a better job, save up, and rent my own place." Grigory Lvovich nodded. "Of course, stay as long as you need. I have plenty of space. There will always be a room for my grandson." Xenia exhaled, the lump in her throat lessening. "Thank you, Dad. However," he continued, "you can't just leave. We need to do this properly." "How?" he pondered. "He doesn't appreciate you. He thinks you depend on him. We need to show him that's not the case, abruptly, so he understands immediately." "What do you mean?" "Pack your things. Tomorrow afternoon, I'll send movers, and we'll clear everything out while he's at work. And in the evening, when he returns, let him see an empty apartment and me." Xenia shivered. What if, he asked harshly. "He hits me, he tries. I've dealt with his kind for half my life. A spoiled boy. It's time he faced the truth." Xenia looked at him, feeling something forgotten awaken within her. Resolve. All these years, she had remained silent, endured, hoping Artyom would change. But he didn't. He just took and took, giving nothing in return. "All right," she said. "We'll do it." The next day, when Artyom left for work, Xenia began packing. Her father sent 2 movers with a truck. They quickly and efficiently packed everything that belonged to her and Myron: clothes, toys, the baby crib, her personal belongings. The furniture belonged to Artyom. She didn't touch it, only her own things. Myron darted around, not understanding what was happening. "Mom, are we moving?" "Yes, sweetie, we're going to live with Grandpa now, and Dad will stay here." The boy frowned but didn't ask further. He was a bright child and sensed that something was wrong. By evening, the apartment was empty. Xenia walked through the rooms. Everything looked unfamiliar, cold. She felt no regret, only relief. The movers took the last boxes. Xenia and Myron went to her father's, settled their son in his new room, and fed him dinner. The boy was tired and quickly fell asleep. "I'll go back," she told her father. "I want to be there when he comes home." "I'll go with you." "Dad, no need. There might be a scene." "That's precisely why I'm going with you," Grigory Lvovich said firmly. "Don't argue." They arrived at 8 in the evening. Xenia took out her keys and opened the door. The apartment greeted them with emptiness and silence. Her father walked into the room, looked around, and nodded. "Everything's right. Now wait." They sat in the kitchen. Xenia looked at the bare walls, at the empty corners where children's toys had stood just yesterday. Artyom returned around 8:30. Xenia heard the building's entrance door slam downstairs, the elevator rumble. Her heart pounded. The key turned in the lock. The door opened. Artyom entered, carrying a bag of groceries. He had likely bought something on the way. He walked into the hallway, hung up his jacket, straightened himself, and froze. The room was empty. "What the?" He moved further in, peered into the bedroom, the nursery. Empty. "Shuka is here," she responded from the kitchen. He burst in and saw her, sitting at the table. Beside her, arms crossed, stood Grigory Lvovich. "What's going on here?" Artyom's voice cracked. "Where are the things? Where's Miron?" "Miron is with me," Xenia answered calmly. "The things are too. I'm leaving." "Are you out of your mind, Xenia?" Grigory Lvovich corrected, taking a step forward. "And watch your language." Artyom looked at him, then back at his wife. "You can't just leave." "I can, and I am." "Because of what?" "Because of money. We discussed this. I told you to ask your father." "Precisely." Grigory Lvovich nodded. "She asked, and I gave. Now she and my grandson are taken care of, and you can continue supporting your mommy. One less worry." Artyom paled. "I worked. I earned. For Lyudmila Fyodorovna," Grigory Lvovich cut in, 150,000 a month for her whims, and scraps for your own son. You're not a man. You're a mama's boy, and my daughter will no longer live with one." Artyom stood there, mouth agape. His eyes showed confusion. He genuinely couldn't grasp what had happened. For him, it was normal to provide for his mother, and his wife should figure things out herself. Keys. Ksenia held out her hand. What? The apartment keys. I'm leaving you. She took out the set and placed it on the table. Let's go, Dad. They stood up and headed for the exit. Kshuka, wait, Artyom shouted. You'll regret this. You'll crawl back on your knees. She turned at the threshold. No, she said calmly. I won't. And she closed the door. The first week was difficult. Artyom called, sent messages, first angry, then pleading. He accused her of selfishness, said she had destroyed their family, that Miron needed a father. Ksenia didn't respond. Then Lyudmila Fyodorovna started calling. Her voice on the phone was full of venom. You've separated me from my son. You've ruined his life. He's alone now, unhappy, and you're pleased. Ksenia silently ended the call and blocked the number. Grigory Lvovich helped his daughter find a new job. Through acquaintances, he found her a position at a reputable company with a salary of 60,000. They lived the three of them in his apartment, and the old man was happy. Miron flourished. Proper food, a calm environment, a grandfather who read him fairy tales every evening. 2 months later, a court summons arrived. Artyom filed for divorce and demanded asset division. Ksenia didn't resist. There was nothing to divide. The apartment was rented, the furniture was his. She didn't want anything. Alimony was set at the standard 25% of income, $6,250 a month. Artyom paled when he heard the amount. That's too much, he declared to the judge. I have a mother, she needs help. The judge, an elderly woman with glasses, looked at him coldly. You have a minor son. He takes priority. The court's decision is final. Ksenia left the courtroom, feeling a strange sense of peace. She wasn't happy. She just knew. Everything was right. Artyom tried to meet her after the hearing. He caught her at the exit. Shuk, let's talk. Maybe we can fix everything. She looked at him, pale, lost, pathetic. No, she said. We're simply finished. Live as you wish. You'll see Miron according to the schedule. He tried to object, but she walked past. Time passed. 8 months. Ksenia was walking Miron home from kindergarten. The boy turned his head, looking at the shop windows, chattering about a new friend from his group. Recently, his father had given him a bicycle, and now the boy dreamed of riding in the park. Mom, are we going to see Grandpa at the factory tomorrow? He asked. He promised to show me the machines. We will, Ksenia smiled. Definitely. They turned the corner, and Ksenia froze. On a bench near the store sat an elderly woman in a worn coat, Lyudmila Fyodorovna. She sat hunched over, staring at the asphalt. A cane stood beside her. Her face was gaunt, her eyes sunken. Her former mother-in-law looked up, and their eyes met. In Lyudmila Fyodorovna's eyes, something flickered. Malice, envy, powerlessness. Ksenia walked past without stopping. Miron didn't even flinch. At home, Grigory Lvovich met them, an apron tied around his waist. How are my travelers? Great, Grandpa. Miron ran to him. Ksenia took off her coat and went to the kitchen. Something was bubbling on the stove. Potatoes with meat. A salad sat on the table. Her father handed her a mug of tea. She took it, wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, and looked out the window. It was darkening outside. Streetlights were on. Do you think I did the right thing? She asked quietly. Grigory Lvovich looked at her, then at his grandson who was pottering in the next room, then back at his daughter. And what do you think? Ksenia finished her tea, placed the mug on the table. The right thing, she said. I did the right thing. Her father nodded and returned to the stove, and Ksenia, for the first time in many years, breathed freely.